I never thought a quiet morning on my dock would end with flashing lights and a cop telling me this was just a civil matter. Imagine that me standing on my own property with a fishing pole accused of trespassing by my own HOA president. She called 911 on me, screaming like I was destroying the entire housing market just by sitting there. That was the moment I realized my so-called retirement by the lake wasn't going to be peaceful, it was about to become a war. My name's Adam Rogers. I'm 42, and I thought I'd left all the insanity behind when I walked away from corporate law. 20 years of drafting contracts and fighting hostile boardrooms had chewed up half my soul, and the divorce chewed up half my bank account. I bought this little lakeside cabin as my sanctuary, a place where I'd drink coffee at sunrise, fish until noon, and maybe carve wood in the afternoons. No drama, no deadlines. That's what I thought. But the universe had other plans. It started on a Tuesday morning, early summer. The lake was like glass, the sun painting everything gold, and I actually whispered to myself, life is finally good again. That's when the roar of an engine tore up my gravel driveway. A white sedan skidded to a stop, kicking dust into the air, and outstepped this woman who practically radiated HOA energy from 50 feet away. Blonde Bob Khakis clipboard tucked under her arm like it was a weapon. She marched down my dock heels, clicking like a countdown timer, phone raised, and recording me like I was the next segment on some crime reality show. "You're trespassing on exclusive community property," she barked, waving her phone. "This is being documented for legal action." I set my coffee down, tried to keep my lawyer calm voice. "Ma'am, this is my dock. I own this cabin and everything that comes with it." I even gestured at the deed sitting inside my cabin, but she wasn't listening. She just ramped up voice climbing like a toddler being denied candy. "I'm Christina Scott, president of this homeowners association, and you are in violation of community standards." Then she pulled the nuclear option, dialed 911 right in front of me, shrieking into the phone that I was destroying property values. When the cop finally showed up, this kid barely older than my law interns, he looked like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. I handed him my deed, notarized and stamped, while Christina shoved her phone in his face. After a few minutes of awkward silence and Christina's ranting, he sighed and said, "This looks like a civil matter. You folks need to work it out yourselves." Then he left, and Christina, red-faced and sputtering, stomped up to my cabin and taped a $500 fine to my door, "Unauthorized lake usage." I stood there holding that notice, feeling like I'd slipped into some alternate universe where fishing from your own dock cost half a mortgage payment. And honestly, part of me wondered if I'd made a huge mistake retiring here. The next few days, it only got worse. Christina drove past my house, constantly slowing down to take photos. Neighbors who used to wave at me now crossed the street. Then my neighbor Mike Johnson came by looking miserable, holding this official-looking certificate. "Adam, I don't know what to believe anymore," he said. Christina had told him and half a dozen other families that they needed to buy premium lake access certificates for $3,000 apiece. He and his wife had put it on a credit card because Christina said the county would fine them $10,000 otherwise. I looked at the paper and my stomach dropped. Fancy seals, legal jargon, but fake, so fake. Still, it made me doubt myself. Maybe I'd missed something in the sale. Maybe there was a rule buried in fine print that gave the HOA authority. That night, sitting at my kitchen table, I actually thought about selling the cabin and cutting my losses. 3 months of peace, that's all I'd get. Maybe that's the best I could hope for. But habit dies hard. I pulled out some old documents the previous owners had left behind, and buried under family photos, I found an old survey from the 1960s. I spread it out under a lamp, used a magnifying glass. And that's when my pulse kicked up. Easement rights, water access, boundary lines extending into the lake. According to this brittle map, my property wasn't just a cabin and a dock. It held the original easement that the entire subdivision depended on for legal lake access. Suddenly, Christina's fury made sense. She wasn't just being a power-drunk HOA president. She was terrified of what I actually owned. The next twist came from the last person I expected, Tom Stone, the guy who played county environmental inspector at one of Christina's fake meetings. He called me out of the blue, voice shaking, and begged to meet in private. Turns out he was no inspector. He was a licensed surveyor Christina had hired months earlier. He showed me documents proving my property easement gave me total legal leverage over the entire community's lake access. And then he dropped the what Christina had already signed a development contract with Lakefront Properties promising to deliver exclusive lake rights for a $50 million resort project. Her cut, $5 million. That was the moment my self-doubt evaporated. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't trespassing, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let some con artist steal my retirement. 20 years of corporate law training clicked back on like a switch I didn't even know I still had. I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to take her down. I teamed up with Jennifer Walsh, a real estate attorney, and with Tom and Mike we built a case. We gathered Christina's fake certificates, her bogus environmental slideshows, even recordings of her ranting about protecting property values. We documented everything. And when Christina called an emergency meeting to scare the community into paying $1,000 environmental restoration fees, I sat quietly in the back recording every lie. Picture it, a packed community center, 28 residents staring wide-eyed at a PowerPoint full of stock photos of dead fish. Christina strutted around in a navy blazer, introducing Tom Poor Guy, forced into playing inspector who babbled about fake federal laws. People were terrified. 19 hands shot up to approve her initiative. That's when I knew I had her. A week later, we called for a real meeting. This time the room was full, nearly every resident present. Christina walked in with her lawyer clipboard clutched like a shield. She tried to launch into another speech about misinformation, but I stood up and cut her off. Before you say another word, the community deserves to hear some facts. Tom entered from the back carrying his surveyor's case. Christina's face drained of color. He set up his projector, clicked through slides, and laid out the truth, my easement, my rights, the fraudulent contract Christina signed promising to sell lake access she didn't own. The room went dead silent as he revealed she'd been trying to deliver our entire lake to developers for millions. I held up copies of the fake certificates, development contracts, and the recordings. This isn't about fishing, I said, my voice steady. This is about fraud. Christina's been selling you fake documents, scaring you into paying illegal fees, and negotiating to sell your lake access to the highest bidder. That's when the room erupted. Mike stood shaking with anger. I paid you $3,000. Christina, you told me it was the law. Other neighbors shouted too demanding answers, and Christina cracked. You don't understand, she screamed, pointing at me. I've been protecting this community. I've sacrificed everything to keep property values up. Her voice broke into hysterics, her lawyer tugging at her arm while she ranted about authority and environmental crises. She admitted in front of 40 witnesses that she'd fabricated schemes, created documents, even cut deals with developers. By the end of that night, the HOA voted her out unanimously. They appointed Mike as interim president, and more importantly, they backed me as the rightful easement holder. Christina stormed out, still shouting that she had authority, but it was over. She'd lost. And that's where it ended. Her power crumbled, her lies exposed, her million-dollar scheme dead in the water. Sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't the strongest. They're just the most desperate to hide their own weakness.